but have a conscious career. Being really conscious about what you're doing. So if your strengths are matching your career, you're likely to succeed. You might not end up there permanently, but you're going to have a really good experience. You're going to be successful and you're going to learn a huge amount of stuff along the way.
Hello. You're listening to the Career Changemaker podcast. Having the courage to leave a career that you have worked hard to build and try something else can be tough. So in each episode, we dive into key career change strategies so that you have a clear understanding of what is required to transition into a new role or a new industry without feeling like you have to start at the bottom or have to take a massive pay cut, because #ain't nobody got time for that. If you are ready for frank and honest discussions about how to become a career change maker, keep listening. I'm your host, lawyer turned career strategist and executive coach, Janine Esbrand. Hello, and welcome to the show. I am looking forward to the conversation that we are going to be having today, because this topic is a topic that I think is so important to consider, yet is so overlooked amongst those who are looking to make transitions in their careers. And that is your strengths. If you know, understand, and are able to leverage your strengths in the work that you do, your level of fulfillment is going to go up, as is the level of impact that you're able to make. So I'm excited to be having a guest expert come on today who is the director of Strengths Profile. A Strengths Profile is the tool that I love to use with my clients to help them to see what their strengths are, understand how they can leverage those, and understand how they can develop more so that they can have optimal performance in the workplace. So I'm going to be talking to Trudy, and she is going to be sharing some major gems for us around how we can be thinking about our strengths and how we can be using them moving forward. So without further ado, let's jump into my conversation with Trudy Bateman. Hi, Trudy. I'm so excited to have you here today. Thanks for being here.
It's a pleasure to be here, Janine.
So can we kick off by you just introducing yourself and just telling the audience a little bit about you?
Of course, yeah, absolutely. So Trudy Bateman, I am the director of Strengths Profile, and Strengths Profile is a tool by Capfinity. So essentially what that means I do every day is lead a team that support the platform, the clients, the consulting, the coaches and the educators that we work with day in, day out to help others be their best self, I guess. And I have to say, I really genuinely believe I have the best job.
I love it. I love speaking to people who are like, I love my job, because I also speak to a lot of people who say, I don't love my job.
Yeah. When you're a kid and you want to be work in the zoo or something, I feel like I found that. I don't work in the zoo, of course, but to begin, when you're in the early stage at school where you have this dream job, I've definitely found my place. So great to be here talking to you.
So can you just share a little bit about the role and how did you get there? How did you get to a place where you're able to say to me now, I love my job? Like, can you just share a bit about your career journey and how you've ended up here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a firm believer that no career goes in a straight line, and I very much have fallen into that category myself. So, there's been some luck and chance along the way as well as hard work. It hasn't been all, there isn't a strategy, is there? And I guess that's what we're here to kind of talk through, some support and help and what we've learned. But I started out actually in my career in marketing. And soon realised, whilst I enjoyed the talking to people and getting people on board with things, I needed the right topic, if you like. So then fell into occupational psychology and marketing. And then immediately when I found psychology, I ditched marketing and just went into psychology. And I've done counselling and I've done coaching, but then sort of found from occupational psychology, which is where I then went into. And I then was working with a colleague who was massively into positive psychology, and it was new then. It was very much new, and people were like, well, what is this? Well, it works on people who are, working on the people that have got things right and what's good in the world. It's like, really? This is all new. Positive psychology is now into its 25th year or close to. then it was like, it's morphed, it went to psychology, coaching, counselling, and then I love psychology, but it wasn't quite what I wanted. And then I found positive psychology, which is, of course, just helping people find what they love. And then from there, it was about 13 years ago, a colleague who I was working with in positive psychology set up Capfinity. So I've been on board for, in the early days of Capfinity as well. But even then, to be honest, Janine, the role that I had there was, it wasn't the ideal role until one day. And it's unfortunate for my colleague, but she had an accident, just a sporting injury accident, and it meant she couldn't deliver a workshop one day. So I was working a bit more in the recruitment side of things, and recruitment around strengths, getting the right people in the right roles, not the right people in development. And all of a sudden I found my hand going up, going, I'll deliver this workshop. And they were like, you've never delivered this workshop before. And I'm going, yeah, I want to deliver this workshop. And then I never looked back and like, this product is the one I'm going to own. This is the one I want to work on. This is the one. I saw that day transformation, real life in front of me. I was working with people in real time that were changing their careers, changing their perceptions, changing their life. And that was it. There was no way I was going back to recruitment after that. So it's great. We put the right people in the right roles. Equally, I wanted to just see that magic, more of that magic. That was me done then.
Oh my goodness, that is such a journey. And I love it because it's, sometimes people feel like, well, I made a decision and that's where I need to go. But that's just such a great example of you just start and opportunities might come up and you never know where you're going to end up. And it's okay for things to develop kind of organically rather than always feel like you have to figure it out ahead of time.
Very much so. And I was really lucky I had believers in me. I worked in strengths-based psychology, so I was just so fortunate. So I guess the first piece of advice is to find those people that will believe in you, because there was a lot of imposter syndrome along the way. Can I do this? How am I doing this role? I'm doing this role because I love what I do, and I have passion behind it, and I have motivation behind it, and I want to make a difference and contribute in this space. It wasn't that I necessarily had all the right qualifications to begin with.
Yeah, I love that. So can we talk a little bit more about strengths? Because for me, when I really started to understand what my strengths were, it made such a difference to how I would show up. So, I'm trained as a lawyer, and I remember being a trainee and looking around at the other lawyers and saying, okay, this is how I have to be a lawyer. This is what it means to be a lawyer. Mm-hmm. And then realizing after a little while that I'm not like everybody. I'm not like all these people. I'm a people person. I like to chat to people. I like to build connection. I like to build rapport. And then I realized that was a strength of mine. And so I used that to my advantage. So I became the lawyer that would just go around speaking to everybody. And then clients liked working with me. And then colleagues liked working with me. And it just made my life easier and I could get the job done. I was a corporate lawyer. So I needed to be able to liaise with people in different departments to get them on board so we could meet the deadlines. So when I realized what my strength was, I was able to use it. But as I work with different people, I recognize that not everybody knows what their strengths are. Yeah. And it's such an important piece. So share a bit about how the strengths profile and the strengths like work that you're doing is making a difference for people when they're looking at their careers.
Yeah, thanks, Ginny. I think so. We often think we know what our strengths are as well, don't we? I think, like you said, it's when people say, I'm good with people, you obviously started using the strengths profile. I might refer to it as SP language. But, I'm good with people. What does that mean? Nobody wants to see that on your CV, do they? So I've got a 20-year-old son, so I've helped him on that 4-year journey of UCAS applications and job applications. And he doesn't want to be yellow, and he doesn't need to be a people person. He needs to be unique. He needs to be special, and he needs to, he needs to be really showcasing those strengths. And of course, the first start is actually, well, what are they? So I guess, so the profile tool that we've got will, list your strengths, it lists your unrealized strengths, which is your potential area as well. So that's a really important area. Even in our recruitment world at Capfinity, we recruit on the basis of potential, not just what you can do. So it's really important that we think about actually what is it we want to do in the future. So come on to a bit more about that if that's of interest. But it's performance is one thing. So what we do at Capfinity within the SP tool is we look at performance. because that's obviously going to help us be successful. But success doesn't stop there. Success is about what we enjoy as well. So success is about what we truly are motivated and enjoying. So we measure for energy and we measure for use as well. So we want to be able to see how often you're doing it as well. Because if you're not using it, then we can help you, or you can help yourself, is to start to use this a bit more. So performance, use and energy. But energy is the magic. Energy is life. Energy is the life force. So this is where you will really make a difference in your career. So, typically, so in the UK now, nearly 50% of organisations are recruiting on the back of some form of strengths-based assessment. So you will need to demonstrate your strengths in any kind of recruitment process. But before you even get to that bit, it's like, well, what are they? Who am I? What is it that I want from my career before I even think about that sort of end path of going down the job? So there are tools out there, ours is one of them. But I think, start off that conversation around, what is it that you truly love? What makes your heart beat faster? What makes time go really fast for you? Like being in flow, we call that. What brings you real joy? What do you volunteer for when you think, why don't I just put my hand up? A bit like me with that workshop. When we're using our strengths, we volunteer for things that just are not in our remit, but we just know that we want to, it's because we want to use our strengths. Think about how others would describe you, Janine. So they might not say you're a people person. They might say you just connect the dots, you just connect people, you build rapport, you deepen those relationships, So sometimes they can give you language as well. And I also think be really careful about what are not your strengths. So in our tool, we look at learned behaviours.
Yes.
And I've been working in this tool for 13 years now. And for me, this is often a real revelation for people. So here we've got a category that says, I'm really good at it, but hang on a minute, I don't actually enjoy it all that much. Mm-hmm. And I wonder how many of us have stopped and thought performance is not our strengths, performance and energy is. So there's a big category that we help people in their careers later on to really stop and think about. And I guess lawyers, accountants, those more traditional roles, will typically be using an awful lot of their learned behaviours, because you probably didn't go into law excited about your detail strength or your adherence strength. But here you are, using it day in and day out. And then it's, trying to then compensate for things like that. So really important, recognizing, first of all, what's the language of strengths and what are they for me? And of course, we've got our tool and there are other tools, and we've got a free version of our tool as well that helps you. But it's the first version, the first starting point is, who am I at my best? What is it I love to do? And then from that, we can pick up sort of, some of the strategies, I guess. But for most people, by not connecting with what they truly love to do, or when they do it, it's just, I won't say too late, but they're in their 40s and career transition can happen at any age. But of course, we're here in our roles to help people do it as early on as possible in their career as they can. And we work a lot with the educator community, so the universities. And I'm so passionate about that cohort of people because if we can get to those 18, 19, 20s or the really early careers and think about how they can be on the right path, then it helps our transition work later on, doesn't it? Where those people hopefully have found those roles earlier on.
Yeah, absolutely. And that part of the report that you mentioned there, when you do the assessment, the learned behaviours is so powerful, because people do say, when I guide clients through it, they say, oh, wow, like I didn't even realize that was a learned behavior, and it just gets you thinking differently. And I think one of the things that is necessary to even go through this process is to just slow down and to pause. And I think with the pandemic, a lot of people have had the opportunity to just pause in a way that they haven't before, but to just say, hold on, I'm doing this, but is this actually what, one, I want to be doing, and one, like, two, should I be doing it based on who I am and what I can bring to the world?
And I think often it's a really good point, often we get promoted on the back of our learned behaviours, because what your manager will see, what your colleagues will see, Janine, is great performance. Now, what they're not really measuring, noticing, talking about is your energy that sits behind it, because you might even be hiding that from people. It's fine, I'll do it. Suddenly it's midnight, it's still not done, or you're stressed about it, and you're not sleeping over it because, it's just something that didn't come naturally to you, but you're not going to tell anyone that. You're going to deliver great performance. It will just be your resilience that gets knocked for it, or, that your well-being potentially. So it's such an important category. And when we get that shift, I see it almost every day. When you see that shift, it's just, you know that it's not just that conversation or that moment, but then the transformation happens for the rest of your life, where you're thinking, actually, is this a strength? Is this something that I want to be owning and doing? Or is it something that I just can do? Learned behaviors are not negative. They're something you can do. And in the recruitment space, we call that sort of like a competency, something you can do, whereas we measure the can do, love to do.
Yes, absolutely. And I think there's another dimension when you think about teams, because when you have one person who understands their strengths and you have another person, if everyone in the team knows what their strengths are, then it's so much easier to make sure that you've got the right people doing the right roles and bringing the right energy and motivation to the work. Because there's one thing just getting it done, and there's another thing getting it done in a way where everybody's like energized and happy and like it's all good. So I think it's so powerful in a workplace setting for people to understand.
Really important, absolutely. And we do a lot of team workshops, and I equally enjoy those, because I think what happens in teams is, one, we take each other for granted, and we're not labeling that. No one's saying, Janine, amazing job at building rapport, because I really don't like it. When we partner well together, when we're working with clients, because I do all the detail work, you do all the rapport building, and, really being able to build those bonds and connections with people in the team. And genuinely, we run really simple exercises. And one, as an example might be, what do I want people to come to me for? And actually, what do I not want people to come to me for? And suddenly you have this conversation that they're so surprised. But Janine, you love detail. Well, I'm good at detail. I'm obviously hypothesizing here around your strengths profile, but you just get a much deeper connections with people. And, all of a sudden, suddenly it makes sense. Suddenly, and also you're not judging people for how they turn up, but you're really appreciating them for how they turn up. So somebody who sticks out actually might just have a strength that no one else in the team has. And all of a sudden we're looking at it very differently, and people having different conversations. It's a case of, I actually really need you. The team really need you, rather than just, somebody who perhaps isn't fitting in as well. So this whole uniqueness piece. So we know within the SP data that there's a 1 in 2 billion chance of you having a profile like someone else. So imagine that.
Billion.
Yeah. Imagine that. So your uniqueness, and going back to careers, is just fundamentally critical as to how you sell yourself, how you talk about yourself, but then also how you decide on the right kind of career. And yes, of course, it's a much bigger picture than strengths use, but it's your values need to match, your priorities need to match. It needs to fit in with everything else in your life. But it's the uniqueness for us, and is the real sort of sweet spot. It's really what you need to be thinking about when you're transitioning or starting out, or at any point in your career. How am I different, and how do I play to that?
Yeah, and I think knowing that you're different, playing to it, and then also knowing how to articulate how you're different and what you bring to the table. Because sometimes you might want to apply for a position and you say, well, there's like 100 people who've already applied. It's like, yes, but none of them are you. So just helping people to see that there's so much value in that uniqueness, if they know how to bring it to the fore, explain it in conversation. Yeah.
And let's say, let's hypothesize here. So one of the biggest weaknesses, because we measure for weaknesses in our tool as well, because we see them as obstacles to our strengths. If we don't understand what our weaknesses are, we are more likely to sort of try and cover them up, or we don't have honest conversations about them, whereas, we would work in perfect partnership if I knew what your weaknesses are. We had honest conversation and we helped each other to mitigate any impact. So we do talk about weaknesses, because also in interviews, let's think about careers, sometimes as a career coach, you need to go to say, what roles out there are just not going to be for you. And also, or maybe what cultures are not going to be for you. If you've got adherence and detail right up there, and adventure and courage as a weakness, you probably don't want sort of a real agile organization. So it's, all those things make it really important to start thinking about what's at the top, but also potentially what we would call what's at the bottom of your profile as well. So, but I think when it comes to weaknesses in interviews as well, people often ask about them, don't they? And for us, it's about impact. It's only a problem if it's having an impact. We've all got weaknesses. So, let's kind of be honest, have honest conversations about them. But, whether I tell great stories, or I'm not funny, or I'm not that creative, what's the impact?
Yeah.
And then it's about addressing the impact. So I'm going back to the interview conversation. I think, well, one of the biggest weaknesses is being competitive. We are naturally, as human beings, not competitive people. But you kind of think in a career transition space, that's an issue, because we're obviously thinking about going for different kinds of careers or roles. And as you say, trying to sell ourselves or not have confidence, or maybe there's some imposter syndrome going on. But maybe it's not about being competitive. Maybe it's about building great relationships in those sales conversations. Maybe it's about having a great purpose. Maybe it's about having a great product that you're behind. Maybe it's about building great collaborations and connections. Is it actually being really competitive that's going to get you that job or that role or make you succeed in that role? Many of us have got competitive as a weakness. You can see how the honest career conversation is, if something is having an impact, what have I got that can help compensate? And actually, is it really having an impact, or am I just giving myself a hard time because I'm a human being and I want to beat myself up about my weaknesses?
Yeah, that's such a good point. It's so good to have awareness around that and just know how to navigate it, rather than being like, oh, I need to act like I've got it all together. It's like, no, we know that we all have weaknesses, acknowledge them, and then
build a team around you, build people around you. And that's at home and in your career, isn't it? I'm really lucky that I've got someone in my team with adherence as his top strength. It's one of my weaknesses, but I couldn't be creative or innovative if I had adherence as a strength, because it would stop me. So therefore I need to break the rules to understand what I can push, what the boundaries are, what we can create together. I've got legacy up there. I don't need it. I don't want it. I have other people around me that can help me with it. And that's the ideal world, of course. But even if you don't have the ideal people that sit there with it, you could still think, actually, what's the impact? Actually, it's helping me do a different role. Is having some of these weaknesses here. So, but the most important thing, and obviously we're on strengths, and I want to move off weaknesses, but in my experience, most people still want to talk about weaknesses, is that you will not grow by developing your weaknesses. You will not. Now, there can be elements to experiences that we can grow within, but you will not grow. And let's think about it let's have an honest conversation, Janine. What's one of yours? I keep saying it's detail and guessing. And
one of my strengths or one of my weaknesses?
Weaknesses.
One of my weaknesses is actually detail, attention.
Okay.
That is one of my weaknesses. I'm a big picture person. I'm very good at here's the plan, here's the vision. But when I actually have to stick with the detail and fully execute, I lose interest.
Okay. So if we were to take your detail, let's say hypothesize it's on a 2. If we took that to a 3, or even a 4, where is it going to get you in life?
I don't think it would make that big of a difference. It wouldn't, because what ends up happening, this is what I had to do when I was working as a lawyer. It's I had to overemphasize right, I need to get this right. Just stress myself out and get anxious about whether or not I have ticked all the boxes, but never feel as though I was leading with, right, this is going to be the most detail oriented thing that I'm going to do. And I'm going to make sure that I don't drop any balls and I don't miss any of the things that I need to do. It was more coming from a place of angst versus feeling sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So we can take our weaknesses up a notch, but generally we're either going to fail because we don't like it, we're not very good at it, or it's just not going to create success. And careers obviously is where we want to have our biggest success. But if we took a strength, so let's again take one of your top strengths.
And my top strength is narrator. Okay,
so if we took your narrator from 7 to 9, where do you think that would take you?
Great, I'll be an author.
So you can see, that's the bit that we want. If you have that much, you never develop weaknesses, you won't grow in that space. But if we can push ourselves and stretch ourselves in the areas of our strengths, try those new careers, push yourself outside of your comfort zone in areas of your strengths, then, you're going to have much more confidence and success in those. And I'd also sort of say around the career sort of, strategy side of things is that it's sometimes you're not going to find, as we spoke about, that it's a linear kind of approach, isn't it, to careers, but have a conscious career. Being really conscious about what you're doing. So if your strengths are matching your career, you're likely to succeed. You might not end up there permanently, but you're going to have a really good experience. You're going to be successful and you're going to learn a huge amount of stuff along the way. In Strengths Profile, we do talk about guide. There's a strengths career guide in there. So we match your sort of sectors to your strengths and tell you where you're most likely to fit with your strengths. But again, even that's just a guide. It's about saying these sectors suit you based on what we know about your strengths. And I think going in really confidently knowing that, maybe I don't have all the answers, but actually I do know that my strengths are going to match. I'm going to give this my best shot and I'm going to enjoy it.
Oh, I love that. I love having a conscious career. That is so that's a nugget.
Yeah, no, it was a colleague. It was a coach client that gave me that one. So yeah, I'm happy to pass that one on, and not even mine, but it's particularly for women as well. I think we often get promoted or maybe directed into careers that maybe we didn't choose. Yeah. So therefore, actually, this isn't playing to my strengths. This isn't going to make me happy. People want different things now post-COVID. The whole well-being piece, the whole, motivation is really up there as the most important things that we can be doing. We've seen a different side to what's important to people in their careers going forward now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it makes so much sense when as you're explaining it and thinking about what we should be focusing on, but it's quite counterintuitive to the way that things have been done. Because if you think about appraisals, it's like your performance over the past year, what went well, what didn't go well, and then the focus is on the things that didn't go well. And how can we improve? That time could be better spent saying, well, look, you did really well here. How can we use that more? Yeah. So I think there should be a shift in the way that we operate in the workplace around.
And we are getting there, I'd suggest, because the fact that nearly half of organisations, as I mentioned, certainly in the UK, are now recruiting for strengths. Those figures aren't quite as strong globally, but strengths profile has been used by 1 million people now. People are talking about their strengths. Is that the areas for development of, we call them, if we can just change that language to what's called, why didn't you hit the goal? I mean, we still have those important conversations. What went wrong? Why would the things, if there is an issue to discuss, and we're not avoiding them, because of course corporate clients still want to talk about weaknesses. Yeah. But what we're saying is, how do we stop that happening again? Were you using your weaknesses? How do you use your strengths to compensate? How do you use your weaknesses less? And most importantly, how do we set those goals, as you say, on strengths? And we do some great work with managers that they get it. Once they have a strengths profile themselves and they start to talk the language, they do get it. They have, they're excited to have conversations. And also it helps performance management. Nobody likes those words anymore, but if you have to address something with a colleague, if you've got a profile in front of you, it becomes a positive conversation. Yeah. I say, Janine, how do we address that detail of yours? And we have a conversation about it. And then I say, how do you use your strengths to compensate? You're excited about that. You don't feel beaten up by a stick. You feel like you're motivated to address any impact. So I think we're certainly seeing a shift in that space, because who wants to recruit on the basis of strengths to then beat people up about their weaknesses in the role? So we're very lucky that, we can kind of take recruitment and then those clients into then kind of development and what that looks like in the role as well.
That's good. That's so good. Yes. Because then it's like positive change across the board, which makes me excited.
Yeah. I think the most important thing is, those careers need to match your strengths. They don't need to be the perfect career, because you might find the perfect career in amongst that sort of, that environment of where your strengths match, because you will watch yourself fly. If you can be amazing. I always tell this to leaders, because they have an awful lot of learned behaviours often, is be amazing at 7 things. Don't be okay at 30 things. That's where you're going to be successful in life.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. This has been so good. So many gems. For me, I'm like, yay. And then for everyone who's listening, I'm sure they're like, this is amazing. If people want to hear more about a strengths profile, where do they go to kind of get theirs if they don't know what their strengths are already?
So it's www.strengthsprofile.com. Everything's on there. There's paid versions of the profile and also free versions. They can find me on LinkedIn as well, as Trudy Bateman. So plenty of resources to go for in terms of careers. And the first journey is knowing who you are. Absolutely. And you are at your best.
Yeah. So good. So I will put the links to that in the show notes. And the last question, I always ask all of my guests, whether they have an inspirational quote, saying, or mantra that they either like to live by.
Yeah, of course. So just timely for this conversation, really. I think it's got to be the Steve Jobs one, really. The only way to do great work is to love what you do. And I think that kind of wraps up our conversation, really, doesn't it?
Yes, I love that quote. It's so good. Thank you so much for being here, Trudy. I really appreciate you coming and sharing your wisdom with us. And yeah, just keep doing the amazing work that you're doing.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
What a brilliant conversation with Trudy. So many gems, so many gems. The stat that she shared blew my mind. There is a 1 in 2 billion chance that you have the same strengths profile as someone else. Amazing. So when we think about uniqueness and what we can really bring to the table when it comes to our roles, when it comes to opportunities, I think we really need to lean into the fact that you're different and your skill set and your strengths allow you to do things in a way that's going to be different to other people. So when you see the value in that, you're able to articulate the value around that, which is super, super exciting. I always love to know what other people's strengths are. So why don't you shoot me a message over on LinkedIn and let me know what are your top strengths. So that's all from me today. I will be back very, very soon. But until then, keep moving towards your career goals. Bye. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe to the show so that you don't miss any future episodes.